Coaches, are you ready to revolutionize your game preparation? For the past 5 seasons, coaches across the nation have been using the ultimate scout team game changer, the Coachpad. Imagine this: no more scrambling on weekends to prep scout cards, no more fumbling with paper and binders. Whether you're drawing your cards digitally with a computer program or sketching them by hand, the Coachpad is your all in one solution. Picture yourself on the practice field effortlessly managing your scout team or standing on the sidelines during game day, syncing adjustments from the press box to your coaches on the sideline and back. With the coach pad, you can clearly see your scout cards even in the brightest sunlight. No more squinting or dealing with the wind blowing clear vinyl sleeves everywhere. This offseason, take your coaching to the next level. Get your coach pad today at thecoachpad.com and gear up for a winning season ahead.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Um, as you start this episode, you'll realize I've started filming again. So when this post, we'll see. But today we got the offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach at Pinecrest School in the great state of Florida, Coach Reese. Coach, how you doing?
Doing great, Coach. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Before we get started, again, we're filming this on Veterans Day. So like I have the day off, you're on maternity leave. So how'd you end up at Pinecrest?
Yeah, so my fourth year here at Pinecrest. Um, my wife and I were actually at a boarding school, Connecticut, Suffield Academy. Worked there for a few years before coming down to Florida. So she works at the same school as me. Yeah, and so I'm initially a Florida native, but finished high school in Georgia, lived most of my life in the South. So yeah, I'm back down this way now. So yeah, fourth year at Pinecrest. This is actually my first season as the OC. I took over that role probably in about I think January. So going into spring ball. As part of that, I did coach receivers, defensive line, special teams coordinator. So did a little bit of everything.
Now we talked a little bit, and you were at Bates, and you went to college at Bates. Two parts of this. One, how does somebody from the South end up at Bates? Because that is a long, 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 long recruiting visit slash transition. Because obviously, for those people who don't know, Bates is in Maine, and so how do you end up there? And then the second part of that question is, how do you end up back down in Florida, down in the South? Because obviously you graduate from Bates. So what is that? How'd that whole
Yeah.
word I'm looking for.
So I
Travel
guess what
work.
got me to Bates. So I moved to Savannah, Georgia, like halfway through my sophomore year, and went to Savannah Christian Prep, played under Coach Donald Chumley. At this point, the 2 years before I got there, they had two state title runs and didn't win. So then my junior year, which was my first year there, we ended up going 15-0, winning state. So that's what really got me my mind ready to like, okay, I'm gonna keep pursuing football because this is great. Something I'm serious about. I seem to be decent at it. Um, I had a neighbor who actually, believe it or not, was the head coach at Savannah State. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he recommended that I start to look at some schools in the Midwest and the North. I was a running back, and I was about 6 feet, 225, so wasn't a speed guy. And he recommended I look at some places up in some cold weather areas. So, as part of my parents, started to take some visits to schools up north. And honestly, what got me to Bates was, I kind of fell in love with that whole New England vibe with the, fall foliage and snow on the ground. As a South Georgia kid, when I first went up there, I felt like I was going to a ski resort. So, that was pretty cool to see. Um, End up loving it. I stayed in New England for a number of years before working my way back down to Florida. One thing I would add, what kind of got me to debate. So when I was at Savannah Christian, we actually ran triple option. So under center, triple option on the dive back. And at this time, Bates actually ran the triple, but they ran from pistol. So in terms of like, fitting into a scheme, it was a perfect fit.
Good. And then, I mean, coming back down, I mean, was that just a family decision? Is that just a job decision? How'd that kind of?
Well, I'd say the biggest piece of it was, being at a boarding school was unbelievable experience. It was great. Um, but kind of after that pandemic time frame, and kind of being unsure of what lockdowns look like and everything, I kind of wanted to be somewhere where we could be outside and do stuff year round. Because kind of curious what's that next winter going to look like if there aren't kids on campus. And so my wife and I started exploring some different spots, and we looked at coming to here, Georgia, um, anywhere in Florida, really. So we found opportunities at Pinecrest down here in Fort Lauderdale.
Good. Now, I mean, so obviously you are currently guys run currently the wing tee. Before we get to that though, we did talk a little bit, and you did mention that you guys have toyed at least in the spring with some air raid concepts and some air raid stuff. So, like, what I mean, I joked with you, but I this is kind of a serious question. I think every, especially younger air raid coach, I'm not wing tee coach, toys or messes with some sort of spread related concept, not necessarily the air raid, but the spread.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what was that kind of journey like toying with the air raid, and kind of what was your ultimate decision on why maybe not to fully go in that direction and still kind of keep what your core that you had?
Good, yeah. So, for I say the past like my first 3 seasons there, we would go back and forth between under center and pistol wing tee, and stayed pretty true to wing tee concepts. Um, and I would say in the spring, I had pretty good personnel, and so we were running mostly um, pistol wing tee. And what kind of got things floating with some air raid stuff was, how can we, expand our pass game more than, belly pass and waggle and, running the sprint outs. So I tried to figure out, what are some concepts that might work out well, and then end up stumbling on a few air raid concepts. I've always been a fan of, Mike Leach and that whole that style of offense, but it's trying to find a blend of what can we use that works out well with our personnel, and also can mesh with our wing T stuff. And so here's what really happened. I mean, a lot of wing T teams, how many pass attempts they're going to have per game, right? You might have a dozen at best. So we had our spring game. So one of the great things about down here in Florida, you get to play spring ball. So we had a spring game down in the Keys. But going into that, I think 2 days before, I met with head coach, and I was telling him, I was like, you know what, we already have some guys, some not injuries, but people illnesses and stuff like that at the running back position. And when you run a 3-back offense, you need to have some depth in the backfield to be able to get through stuff. We were still missing guys to the track, so we had several guys who were state qualifiers for track and field, and so we were down some skill guys. And so I told him, I was like, you know what, if we come out running the ball, I don't know if I'm going to have enough running backs in the second half, because right now I only have 3. So he was like, okay, let's just work our pass game more. So we spent the last couple of days with spring practice working pass plays, working our passing stuff, and it was looking good. And then so we in our spring game, we had 41 snaps on offense and 35 were pass attempts. Ended up throwing for 280 some yards, 3 touchdowns, and kind of hit the team by a surprise because all the tape they had on us was running under center wing T, and we come out. I think we were an empty about 60% of the snaps. So we really did that because it worked well what we had at that time period. And then that was kind of a shock to a lot of us. 35 pass attempts for something we don't really do too often. So as we progress through offseason workouts and then getting into preseason, we had to be a little bit more realistic so we can keep some of that. But when you have a spring game where you get a whole month of football and then one game, there's a lot of flexibility. But when you have to face opponents, week by week, you gotta really trim down what you're trying to do. So along with that, and then some loss of personnel, it wasn't in um, our best interest to keep running a lot of those empty sets. And then so we really transitioned. Well, I would say transition. We'd always been a bug sweep team, right? Regardless what we were formation, we run bug sweep out of empties, all that kind of stuff. So we started running a little bit more of the wing tee concepts out of shotgun. A lot of two receivers, tight end wing sets, still running our basic plays. Um, and then we realized, what, a lot of these things that we want to hit more properly would just be more beneficial from under center. And thankfully, since we've historically been running that, it wasn't a big hurdle to get back. It took a matter of a week, and we were, our center exchanges were great, meshes were great, so it didn't take us too long to get right back where we were.
Do you find, because I toyed with this year, I really toyed with it this year because we were a lot more true shotgun wing tee than I had been in the prior 3 years when I was a head coach. And I even toyed with it a little bit ago. Do you find that it is hard to marry the air raid passing game and the wing tee run game because of the formations? I think
Yes.
that's okay. Because I think that's the realization. Like, I kind of thought it already, but I think that's the full realization I came to, and I've come to realization. Like, I know some guys have the I forget what it's called, a blend of it. And I know Kenny obviously pulls his own piece
Mm-hmm.
out of it too, but like, I just find outside of some of the quick game stuff, it's just hard to, because the formations limit either direction, limit you too much and don't allow you to
Mm-hmm.
fully maximize.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I would say that some of the air raid principles around. I'd say like the my favorite play that we run out of empty sets was Haas. So hitches outside, slot seams, and I think when you go against a team that runs a single high safety, whether they're man or cover three, that play gives you answers, especially running out of empty. It puts a lot of pressure on that middle field safety to kind of dictate, and then so a lot of stuff we did was kind of based off that play. So when I coached quarterbacks, it was really off like, if we're going to be an empty and I'm running one pass play the whole game, it'll probably be this one. And it's not that we're going to throw that seam. We run the play a dozen times, we might throw the seam 3 times. It's just a matter of how defenses respond. And as long as we have decent timing, someone should be open, unless there's, a D tackle rips right through or something like that. But to make those plays work out well, you kind of need to be in more of a spread setup, right? You have to, make that defense expand out a little bit to try to find those green grass areas. So, but when you're running, and that worked out well on empty, but when you go back into your, tight end wing, three back, set, those same concepts don't work as well. And it's almost as if like you're trying to force them in. Running Haas isn't really organic with a tight end wing. So we realized that, those situationally, we kept those plays in, but it only situationally where we needed them.
Yeah, just that's kind of and as conversations go in the off season, like, it's what's the better path. And
Mm-hmm.
again, all that is personnel based and so forth, and what you can coach and what you and all that and all that jazz. But I was just kind of, since you brought that up, when we were going back and forth talking, like, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you, because like, I feel like, again, I know some people have done it, but talking to some of those people, they're either now one or the other. Anyways, like,
Mm-hmm.
they were I forget, I think it was like wing raid or something like that. I don't remember what it was called, but like, I mean, they did it, but like, now they're either not running as much air raid stuff, or they're not running as much um wing T stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I don't know. Like I said, and again, every state, every school is different on how they approach it. But again, I find that there's some difficulty there. Now, you also there's two other things I want to ask you about before we get off, and one of them was, I mean, obviously, we talked, and you mentioned a little bit there that you started the season more gun pistol stuff.
Mhm.
A lot of that's personnel, a lot of that's choice, allows you to do a little bit more things. Obviously, we
Yeah.
talked about down option and stuff like that. Um, and as the season went on, you guys transitioned. Now, because you'd been out of center before, your meshes were obviously easier, as you kind of mentioned. But like, what was that kind of process of, okay, we need to do this to go back under center? Like, how did that functionally change you from a practice standpoint, a play calling standpoint, kind of what you did week to week when you kind of made that decision? Hey, we need to go.
I would, yeah, I'd say, starting off, let's just say week one regular season, we were really in a lot of shotgun running, more of the gun tee, a lot of buck sweep things. And I'd say that what issues we faced is one of the good things of being under center is you have answers for a lot of things. There are a lot of answers. And I would say that being exclusively in shotgun limited some of the plays we could run, but also the timing of the plays. Some things just hit quicker out of under center. And so I'd say probably about a few weeks into the season, I was, thinking it was like, I really might need to get some under center stuff. I think the first reason was it would help out with things like down and trap, but also it would help out our play action pass a little bit. It would give the quarterback the luxury to be able to hide the ball a little bit more in the play action game. Whereas if we're in true shotgun, when you run that waggle, the quarterback's catching a shotgun, back is crossing his face, right? The ball's not really hidden. But when you're under center and you have to put your back to the defense, you have two ball fakes and then you're booting out, right? That holds the defense for much longer. So I feel like I can think our play actions aren't hitting how they're supposed to. And I feel like they would be a little bit stronger holding that defense if we were more under center. So, it's complicated. I'd say trying to get that in. We don't have the biggest roster, so we usually do offense day, defense day, and so you have to ask yourself, what, like how much time is it going to take for us to get back under center? And thankfully, we found a good window for it for the bye week, where we really just focused on a lot of just QB center exchanges because in all honesty, it really only changed stuff for the center and the quarterback and the T. The T's depth, he's shorter now, so he's like at 5 yards. But for the offensive line, receivers, the wings, nothing really changed for them. So it was just, a lot of, so on defense day, even though our center plays defensive line, they're getting as many snaps as they could. And so when it was time for us to start getting to, team and inside run periods, I'm not going to lie, the first day or so, it was just like ball on the ground, every other snap type thing. But, they got acclimated pretty quickly and it ended up working out really well for us, especially with the play action and also some of those plays like trap down. We're hitting a little bit faster, which we like.
One last thing I want to ask you about, because you mentioned it, and I have a secret love for it, is not a secret love, that's a terrible statement, but like again, you can tell I've not filmed one of these in a while. Like so what happens when you film a lot ahead. But like you and like God, one of our first episodes on this podcast was about belly pass, and I love belly pass, and because you don't call it a lot, but it is always open, and no one non-wing T people don't think it's going to be open, and two, it's either an auto 5 yard gain or it's a 40 yard gain because
Yeah.
you just got to break one tackle. So kind of, I mean, for people who aren't wing T people, one, can you explain what belly pass is? And two, kind of what goes in your process of calling it, and kind of what you're looking for when you call belly pass? Because God, I love it.
Yeah. I'd say we run belly passively to the weak side. Typically, a lot of our belly is run to the weak side. So we'll run it that way. And I'd say for the offensive line, the first thing is it really depends on that front, right? So, and are they going to be even front or odd front? So, I'd say a lot of the time in practice is spent more on the pass protection because really, your pass game is only good as your pass pro. So making sure that are they going to be an odd front, even front, make sure we're adjusting for that play side, but also back side too. Because one of the things we really, preach to our quarterbacks is, staying behind your protection. So if your protection's rolling, you need to be rolling with it. We're not going to be, there's a time and place to be set up in the pocket. And for this pass play, typically it's not too much. We want to kind of slide with that. And so I'd say belly pass is essentially where we have, we'll go tight and wing. We'll run this to the weak side. We're going to basically go kind of a fake handoff to the B gap. That play side wing, we'll do it two ways. So if it's a tight end wing, he'll run a flat, and the tight end will run a corner, kind of more like a smash concept. If it's to the weak side, the receiver will run a burst corner, and the back that side will run a 10-yard out from the backfield. But we realized that running that out a little deeper really pushes that defense back, and it makes a little bit more space. Typically because I realized that if he just runs right to the flat, that outside backer will kind of see it too quick. So I'm almost running him up the field and then breaking out. Nothing crazy, but just to gain a little more depth. So QB reverse pivots, puts the ball in the T's belly and rotates with his blocking, with his line, blocking. And then, like you said, it's in those either 5 yards or 40 yards because, if anything, you're going to have a safety in a corner, and that's about it. Plus, you got 2 routes going that side. So, if you really sell that like you're running belly, which isn't that difficult to do because a lot of stuff doesn't really change. It's like almost the if the guard needs to pull, he's not so much pulling the kick, he's pulling and logging a little bit. And so the backers may not notice that difference. So yeah, you don't run it often, but if they see enough belly, they're gonna start to come fill those gaps.
Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah. So I mean, we've experimented with a lot of ways to run it too. Run it with some rip Liz motion with it, running it to the strength, running it at a variety of formations, just to keep giving defenses different looks.
Yeah, we did it. I mean, we would do it 2 ways. We would, I mean, obviously depends on your backfield alignment factors in that, but we could slide motion our strong side wing over and fake belly, and he'd flat. You'd slide him over, and then so your backfield guy, you can go double wing. There's a lot of ways to do it, but those, I mean, we made money out of it. And I've had quarterbacks that can't throw very well who would go 2 for 4, and both his completions are belly pass, and he's got like 2 for 4 for 64 yards. And
Yeah,
I mean, because again, usually you just have to break one tackle, and then maybe the
mm-hmm.
corner safety's tackling you 30 yards down the field. And that's assuming that the linebacker even sees you go out into the flats. So, yeah. Other than that, like I said, coaches, check out our sponsors, do all that jazz. Give Coach a follow on Twitter. All that will be in the bio of the video as normal and all that jazz. And if you want to talk more to Coach, I've talked to Coach a little bit about if we do the old school clinic that we did this year, this past year, I'll phrase it that way. Try to get Coach on for that so we can kind of show some stuff and talk a little bit more in depth. Otherwise, like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. And that is in our episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.